Long before Valentine's Day became about red roses, heart-shaped chocolates, and carefully written love notes, there was no love in it at all. In fact, the story of Valentine's Day begins not with romance, but with fear, blood, and a world that did not yet believe love was gentle. Tonight, we are going to drift back in time to a colder, darker age, when survival mattered more than affection, and when February was not a month of romance, but a month of danger. Pause for a moment and imagine a world without electricity, without soft music, without warm cafes or glowing city lights. The nights were long, the winters were cruel, and people believed the world was ruled by unseen forces, spirits, gods, and curses. In ancient times, February was considered one of the most unsettling months of the year. Food supplies were low, cold still clung to the air, disease spread easily, and death felt close. People did not celebrate love in February. They feared it. In ancient Rome, this time of year was believed to awaken chaos, both in nature and inside the human soul. And to control that chaos, the Romans created a ritual that would later be quietly rewritten, softened, and eventually disguised as love. The ritual was called Lupercalia. It was not gentle, it was not romantic, and it was certainly not kind. Every year, in mid-February, priests gathered near a dark cave at the base of a hill. This cave was believed to be sacred, the place where the city itself was born. Animals were brought forward, goats, dogs. They were sacrificed. The blood was warm, the air smelled of iron and smoke, and the priests dipped their hands into the blood, then wiped it across their foreheads. Afterward, they laughed, not out of joy, but because the ritual demanded it. Strips of animal skin were cut from the bodies, and the priests ran through the streets, whipping anyone they passed, especially women. This was believed to bring fertility, to chase away evil, to protect the city from death. Women did not run away. They stood still. They believed the pain would bless them. This was the true ancestor of Valentine's Day. No flowers, no poetry, only fear, superstition, and blood. Love, as we understand it today, did not exist in this ritual. Marriage was practical, relationships were transactional, and emotions were considered dangerous. But something slowly began to change. As centuries passed, the Roman world transformed. Old gods faded. New beliefs spread quietly, often in secret. Among those beliefs was the idea that love, true love, had value beyond survival. And this idea was dangerous, especially to emperors. There are stories, blurred by time, of a man named Valentine, not a romantic hero, not a poet, a priest. Some say he lived during a time when marriage was forbidden for young men. The empire believed unmarried soldiers fought better, loved less, obeyed more. But Valentine, according to legend, continued to perform marriages in secret. Quiet ceremonies, whispered vows, love hidden
in shadows. When he was discovered, he was arrested. There was no celebration, no forgiveness, only a prison cell, cold stone, and silence. It is said that Valentine was executed, not for love, but for defying control. And slowly, very slowly, his story began to merge with the violent festival that already existed in February. The blood rituals were too dark, too uncomfortable for a changing world. So they were replaced, not erased, but repainted. What was once fear became devotion. What was once sacrifice became symbolism. And what was once death was quietly renamed love. But the darkness never fully disappeared. It simply learned to whisper. As the centuries moved forward, Valentine's Day transformed again and again. Poets reshaped it, churches redefined it, merchants eventually sold it. Yet beneath the soft colors and gentle words, the foundation remained. A reminder that love, in its earliest form, was never meant to be peaceful. And as we move deeper into this story, you'll begin to see how romance was built on rituals meant to control fear, and how a day now filled with hearts was born from a world terrified of chaos. Slow pause.
As the old Roman rituals faded into memory, Valentine's Day did not disappear. It changed, quietly, slowly, almost unnoticed. By the Middle Ages, Europe had begun to see love not just as necessity, but as something mysterious, something dangerous, and something deeply emotional. Love was no longer public. It became secret. At this time, marriage was still rarely about affection. It was about land, family alliances, money, survival. Real love, the kind that stirred the heart, was often forbidden. And forbidden things tend to grow stronger in the dark. Poets began to write about longing, about desire that could not be fulfilled, about lovers separated by duty and fate. February, once feared, was slowly becoming symbolic. It was believed to be the time when birds began to choose their mates. This idea, simple and quiet, changed everything. If birds found love in February, perhaps humans did too. And so Valentine's Day became associated with courtly love, a love that was distant, often unreturned, and painfully idealized. Knights wrote poems to women they could never marry. Lovers exchanged words, not touches. Emotion replaced action. Desire replaced reality. And obsession quietly entered the story. Love letters became common. Not joyful letters, but aching ones. Letters filled with patience, with waiting, with hope that often went unanswered. Valentine's Day was no longer violent, but it was not happy either. It became a day of longing, a reminder of what you wanted and what you could not have. In some stories, people believed Valentine's spirit could bless romantic dreams. Young women performed rituals, hoping to dream of their future husband. Names were written, folded, hidden under pillows. Love became superstition again, just softer and quieter. But obsession always walks just behind romance. As the centuries passed, Valentine's Day grew more emotional, more intense. Jealousy, possession, fear of loss. Love was no longer about survival. It was about identity. To love someone meant to give them power over you, and not everyone handled that power gently. There are old records, stories whispered rather than celebrated, of duels fought over Valentine's affection. Friendships broken, lives ruined. Love letters intercepted, promises betrayed. Valentine's Day was becoming a mirror. It showed people not just affection, but their deepest insecurities. And still, there were no chocolates, no flowers, just words and expectations. As printing became more common, Valentine's messages spread faster. What was once private became shared. And with that, comparison was born. Who received a letter? Who did not? Who was chosen? And who was forgotten? Loneliness became part of the tradition, a quiet, aching loneliness that sat beside the idea of love. For many, Valentine's Day was not romantic at all. It was a reminder of absence, of silence, of waiting for something that never arrived. Yet, despite the pain, people continued to believe. Because believing in love, even painful love, felt better than believing in nothing. And so, Valentine's Day survived. Not because it was joyful, but because it was human. Flawed, emotional, obsessive. And as we move forward in time, this obsession will be transformed again. Not by poets, not by lovers, but by industry, by profit, by a world that learned how to sell emotion. In the next chapter, we'll explore how Valentine's Day became commercialized, packaged, and sold to millions, and how love slowly turned into expectation. For now, allow your thoughts to slow. There is nothing to solve tonight, only history, drifting quietly into sleep.
For centuries, Valentine's Day belonged to poets, to dreamers, to people who expected nothing in return. But the world was changing, quietly, gradually, and without asking permission. By the late 1700s and early 1800s, something new appeared: printed Valentine cards. At first, they were simple, plain paper, soft words, carefully chosen phrases. People could finally express feelings without saying them out loud, and for many, that felt safer. But once something can be printed, it can be sold, and once it can be sold, it can be scaled. Love was no longer private, it became reproducible. In Victorian England, Valentine's cards exploded in popularity. Some were romantic, some were poetic, others were cruel. So-called vinegar valentines were sent anonymously to mock, to insult, to shame. Valentine's Day now carried both affection and humiliation. Love and rejection shared the same envelope. At the same time, the Industrial Revolution was accelerating life itself. Cities grew louder, faster, more crowded. People worked longer hours. Lives became measured by productivity, and emotion, once freely expressed, needed a shortcut. Buying something became easier than writing something. Businesses noticed: florists, chocolate makers, card companies. They realized something powerful. Love created urgency, and urgency created profit. By the early 1900s, Valentine's Day had changed again. No longer a quiet moment of reflection, it became an obligation. If you loved someone, you were expected to prove it, with gifts, with cards, with gestures that could be measured. Love now had a price tag, and the price rose every year. Advertising stepped in to guide emotions. You were told how much love should cost, how love should look, how disappointment should feel if expectations were not met. Valentine's Day was no longer about connection. It was about comparison. Who received roses? Who received nothing? Who was remembered? Who was forgotten? Silence became louder than ever. For some, this new version of Valentine's Day felt exciting. For others, it felt isolating. Loneliness became visible. Store windows glowed red and pink, while many hearts felt gray. And still, the holiday grew. Movies romanticized it. Music softened it. Culture polished its edges. The darker origins, the violence, the obsession, the superstition, were quietly buried. Valentine's Day was now smiling, but beneath that smile, the pressure remained. To be chosen, to be loved, to be seen. Love had become a performance, and not everyone wanted to act. By the late 20th century, Valentine's Day was unavoidable. Even those who rejected it were forced to acknowledge it. And that, perhaps, was its greatest transformation. From ritual to romance to requirement. Yet, despite everything, despite commercialization, despite expectation, despite exhaustion, people still hoped. Because no matter how it was sold, love itself could not be manufactured. It could only be felt or missed. As we move into the modern world, Valentine's Day will become even louder, even more connected, and strangely, more lonely. In the next chapter, we'll explore Valentine's Day today, how technology changed love, and why this ancient holiday still refuses to disappear. For now, let your thoughts slow. There is nothing you need to buy, nothing you need to prove, only history, softly unfolding as sleep approaches.
By the time Valentine's Day entered the modern world, it had already lived many different lives. It had been violent. It had been poetic. It had been commercial. But now it became digital. Love no longer traveled by letter. It moved through screens, text messages, emails, social media posts. Valentine's Day was no longer a private moment. It became something to display. Photos of flowers, public declarations, carefully edited happiness. For the first time, love was visible to everyone. And visibility changed everything. Comparison became constant. People did not just ask, "Am I loved?" They asked, "Am I loved enough?" Enough to be posted, enough to be shown, enough to be admired. And for many, the answer felt uncertain. Technology promised connection, but it also created distance. Dating apps appeared, offering endless choice. Swipe left, swipe right. Love became fast, disposable. People were no longer rare, they were replaceable. And Valentine's Day reflected this shift. More messages, but less meaning. More options, but less commitment. The idea of romance remained, but patience faded. At the same time, loneliness increased. Even as people stayed connected, many felt unseen. Valentine's Day highlighted this feeling. Those without partners felt invisible. Those in relationships felt pressure to perform happiness. And those in unhappy relationships felt trapped by expectation. Valentine's Day became emotionally loud. For some, it was joyful. For others, it was exhausting. The holiday now carried a strange contradiction. Never before had love been discussed so openly and felt so confusing. Mental health conversations grew. People began questioning whether Valentine's Day was helping or hurting. Some rejected it entirely. Others redefined it, celebrating friendships, self-love, quiet moments. Slowly, the meaning softened again. Valentine's Day no longer belonged only to couples. It became flexible, personal, less rigid. In many ways, this was a return to something older. Not the rituals, not the commerce, but the emotion. The simple human desire to feel close to someone, or to feel at peace alone. And yet, the holiday still lingers, because beneath every version of Valentine's Day, ancient or modern, is the same question. Will I be loved? That question has never changed, and perhaps it never will. As our story approaches its end, we begin to see Valentine's Day not as a celebration or a failure, but as a reflection of culture, of fear, of hope. In the final chapter, we'll gently step back and ask, why does Valentine's Day still exist at all? And what does it say about being human? For now, let your breathing slow. The world can wait. History is finished speaking.
After everything,
tonight.
the violence, the poetry, the obsession, the commercialization, Valentine's Day is still here. Not because it is perfect, but because humans are not. Across centuries, this single day has absorbed fear, hope, desire, and disappointment. It has survived empires collapsing, beliefs changing, and technology reshaping love itself. And yet, the question remains the same. Will I be remembered? Valentine's Day exists because people want reassurance. Not loud reassurance, just a quiet sign that they matter to someone, or that they matter to themselves. In a world that moves quickly, that demands productivity, that measures worth in numbers, Valentine's Day pauses the noise, even briefly. It reminds people to look inward, to acknowledge connection or absence without explanation. Perhaps that is why this holiday never disappears, because no matter how much we evolve, the need for closeness remains unchanged. Valentine's Day is not about romance. It never truly was. It is about vulnerability, about admitting that we are affected by others, that we care, that we hope. And hope, even quiet hope, is powerful. So whether this day brings warmth or silence, it still serves a purpose. It reminds us that feeling deeply is not weakness, it is human. And as history continues to move forward, Valentine's Day will change again, but its heart, uncertain, searching, and hopeful, will remain. For now, let the past fade. Let the present soften. There is nothing to chase tonight, only rest, only stillness, only sleep. And if these quiet stories, these slow moments of history, help your mind feel calm, you are welcome to stay, to listen again, to let history drift by, one peaceful night at a time. If you'd like more slow, calming stories like this, you can gently support this channel by liking the video or subscribing, only if it feels right. There is no rush, no pressure, just history quietly helping you sleep.